Yesterday, Thomas from Omaha, Nebraska, he's been on our tribe for about a year and a half, asked me a question about what I thought about Amazon and how I thought it was going to rally at the end of the year. And I said, I need to do a deep dive into Amazon and see if there's something I can learn that I can pass on to my tribe. And so here is a chart on Amazon that goes back to 2020. And I learned a lot. I really did. And I want to then take what I've learned on Amazon and apply it to what I think is going to happen with Nvidia. Amazon's an interesting story, and if we go back to 2020, we can see that Amazon was a very big beneficiary of the COVID virus. That stands to reason. The price of the stock went up from $80, and then when COVID was over, it finished up somewhere around 187. But I want you to notice that it went from 187 down to 80 over the next year. So I asked myself the question, why did that happen? Did their revenues drop? No. And you need to understand the price of a stock is dependent upon two elements. One, its earnings per share, and then the other, its PE ratio. So back here in 2020, the earnings per share were $2.09. The PE ratio was 38.59, and that, if you multiply those two together, you come up with about $81. As it then went up, it got to its high, as I say, about 188, 190. Now its PE ratio is 57.27, and its earnings per share is $3.30. And we can see its revenues went up almost 33% from 386 billion to 469 billion. So that sets a tempo that we can understand of how Amazon moves. But what happened to take it from a PE or an earnings per share of $3.30 to a minus 27 cents or 29? What happened? Well, if we go back and we look at the financials, we find a number of things took place. Number one was they went through the experience of tremendous growth, 33% growth in revenues from 2020 through 2022, created by the pandemic. But they realized something. They were paying a lot of money to UPS and FedEx to deliver the packages, mostly UPS. So what they decided to do was build their own overnight distribution centers, and take UPS out of the equation. At the same time, they decided that they needed to make a move towards electric vehicles so that they weren't spending so much money on gas for delivering the packages to your door within 24 hours. So they made a major investment in Raytheon. On top of that, if you remember, this is when their employees were saying, we don't like the way you're treating us. You make us work too hard. You don't give us enough break time, and we want better benefits, and we're going to unionize. Well, that broke the straw. And with those elements in place, over the next year, Amazon totally, as far as they could, went to robots to get rid of the people, to get rid of the cost of gasoline, and they built these 1-hour distribution centers. That took a tremendous amount of money. If you go to their financials, you'll see there was a swing of about $58 billion that came off their bottom line as a result of this build-out, this robotic effort, and the investment in Raytheon. So that, and you would look at it and say, well, that's probably happened because their sales were down. No, their sales continued to grow. Then, once they had the robots in place, they had as many electric vehicles as they could, and they had their distribution. They got rid of UPS obligation. Look what happened to the stock. It climbed, and it's now climbed to where it's at let's see, it's at $193. So what I said then was, okay, let me take the information. First of all, let me explain one thing that really leaped out at me. If you're regular on my channel, what they did with the robots in the 1 hour and in their distribution centers is exactly what Symbotics is doing for Walmart and Target. They are following Amazon's lead, but they're contracting it out rather than going in and doing it all at once. They're doing it over a period of time. So if for those of you who have asked me, what happened to Symbotics? Nothing has happened to Symbotics except the rest of the world doesn't know what's going on, okay? You just keep your Symbotics and stay with it. Okay, so here we are. Now what I want to say is, okay, if I see this pattern and I know that PE ratios are and earnings per share basically determine what the price of a stock is going to be, and if I listen to earnings calls and if I subscribe to Wall Street analysts, I can predict that by the end of this year, and understand, whoops, didn't want to move that, understand the price of the stock is not so much a function of what their earnings per share are this year, but instead next year. In other words, look at this. They came to realize that they were going to have a negative earnings per share, and the price dropped not on current earnings per share of $3.30, but on future earnings per share of a minus 29 cents. So if I go use that logic and I say, okay, what is Amazon's price going to be at a PE ratio of 42.8 based upon next year's earnings per share of $5.74? The price is going to be $245.67 at the close of business on January 1st, 2025. Okay? Then I go and I project that further and say, okay, what is the price of the stock going to be on January the 1st, 2027? Again, I go forward and look at the earnings per share, which is going to be $8.81. I multiply that times the the PE ratio of 42.8, and I come up with a projected price on Amazon of $377. Just for your information, the next earnings per share is projected to be $10.34. So yes, Thomas, Amazon's going to rally over the next 3 years. So I took that information and said, what have I learned from it? Well, what I learned from it is numerous. One, you can predict the future price of a stock if you have a good, reliable price of what the earnings per share are going to be, not this year, but the following year, and if you have a good handle on how the market feels about the stock, because that's what a PE ratio is. What is the attitude? Do we believe that Amazon is going to grow and be strong? How many years, because that's what that represents, how many years of earnings are we willing to put onto the price of the earnings per share? So that's an analysis, my analysis of where Amazon's going. And thank you, Thomas, for your question. Now what I wanted to do is answer the question that everybody has on their mind. Using this same logic, where is Nvidia going? Okay, let's take a look. This is Nvidia. I go back to 2023. The end of 2022, 2023 start. And you can see that at that time, earnings per share were 33 cents. This is adjusted for the 10x split. Revenues were at 26.9 billion. Earnings per share was at about 40.6, and that justified the price of $14.85. We then move into 2023, 2024, the start of 2024. Earnings per share were at $1.30. PE ratio was at 37.76. That supports a price of $49.09. Now we move into projections. This is not hard in stone earnings per share. This is projected earnings per share for 2024 for Nvidia is $2.70. If we stay with a current PE ratio of 45, that means that it's going to end the year pretty much where it is right now at $123.12. The only thing that will potentially eschew that is the earnings for the coming year. Okay, so here we see that the earnings for the coming year are jumping to $3.51. If we stay with the 45.6 PE ratio, that supports a price of $160.60. That would be the price that I would project for the end of 2025, the start of 2026. You see the logic that I'm following. Let's go back to this 123.12 and throw some light on that we just learned this last week that Jensen and Colette is the CFO of Nvidia, collectively sold $53 million worth of stock. Is that because maybe they want to buy a big house? Maybe they want to buy a big boat? And they aren't giving up on the ship or on the because they are confident the price of the stock is going to go up to 160 and then up to 185 based on current numbers? Or are we to read into that there is a disaster coming, that they don't believe their chips are going to work in the data centers because of overheating and not availability of electricity? Should we read that into it? Not until Jensen tells us. Not and again, I take you back to the Amazon. Did Amazon tell us in their earnings calls that they were going to robotize, they were going to build out new distribution centers, they were going to invest? Yes, they did. Yes, they did. They didn't blindside us on it. So I'm assuming that Jensen isn't going to blindside us with some, hey, the chips don't work because we can't cool the data centers down. I don't think that's going to happen. What I think is going to happen, based on the information that I have at my disposal, the research that I can do, is that the price is going to continue to go up based on earnings per share projections of $5.40 per share and staying with that PE ratio of 45.6. And until someone gives me a reason to bring that down or to raise it up, I'm going to stay with it, that the price in the start of 2028 is going to be $246.24. So you look at what you've got invested in Nvidia, and if you're happy with January 1st, 2028, a price of $246.24, I'd say you're okay. If you can make more money somewhere else, well, then take some of your profits and put it there. Where might that be? I alluded to it, and I've talked about it. They have some problems. They have some problems here. They're talking about eventually upgrading these chips another tenfold in the next 2 years. By the time we get to 2028, it could be 20-fold. How are they going to cool the data centers? And how are these chips going to relate to advanced micro devices chips and to Intel's chips? And is there going to be a whole division or change in whose chips are used for what purposes? Such as, I'm talking about buying a AI factory. I don't need Jensen's best chip for what I needed to do. I believe that Amazon, or I believe that AMD or Intel will recognize there's a niche of small business people who don't have massive amounts of data that have to be combed through. They comb through the data of their clients, of their advertising and promotion and marketing and their research. But they don't need the power of Nvidia's chips. Is there some people who are going to? Yes, by all means. The medical field is going to feed off of this. It may give us a cure for cancer. It may give us a cure for heart disease. That's going to take a lot more data than marketing best of us investors. I think this whole realm is going to look very, very different, not in 5 to 10 years, in 2 to 3 years. And if you've got that much time, I'd keep some of my money. I'm going to keep some of my money in Nvidia, but I'm also going to go after those companies that are going to solve Nvidia's problems, like Vertiv, like Modine, like the people who are going to put gallium carbide into the wafers so that they can reflect more heat. Okay? These are the kind of things that you need to be up on. What I want to do is do this for some more stocks. I want to look in depth as if this is right, and then I want to show you that I share this on my cheat sheet. These numbers change on a daily basis. In doing this, I recognize that my source for earnings per share changed in just the last week because of information that became available. So my cheat sheet changes daily, and I try to keep it updated so that once you understand this concept, you can go to the cheat sheet and say, I understand why the price changed, and I understand what happened. But we got to watch and we got to listen to those earnings calls, because we don't know that Jensen won't show up. Just like I guess Jeff was the CEO of Amazon when they announced that they were totally revamping their distribution system. We got to listen and pay attention and then connect the dots. This is not that difficult. It was 20 years ago when the data wasn't available, but the data is available now. And if you've got the time and you've got the energy and you've got the sources, do it, or join a tribe. I happen to know of one.